Dust swirled across the dry prairie under a blood-red sunset. Two men, friends once, brothers by choice, now stood back to back, revolvers glinting cold in their hands. One trigger pull could end a friendship, or end a life. What happened next changed the fate of the frontier forever. Jonas, Red Hand, McAllister was not born under golden skies, nor did he grow up with silver spoons. His childhood memories were carved from arid winds and broken fences, a small ranch on the edge of nowhere, where cattle outnumbered folks and the only promise was a horizon fading into dust. His father, a stern man with a steady hand and a bitter tongue, hammered the creed into Jonas early: in these lands, you either ride with grit, or get trampled by life. As a boy, Jonas learned to read horses better than men. He learned that trust was rarer than water in those deserts. By the time he hit his 20s, Jonas had become a legend of the prairie, a sharpshooter whose name echoed in saloons and outlaw hideouts alike. But legends carry scars, betrayal, loss, and a desert that doesn't forgive. On one fateful summer evening, Jonas discovered that his closest friend, Samuel, Dust Eyes, Harper, had gambled away their entire ranch in a card game rigged by knives and false eyes. The betrayal cut deeper than any gunshot, and the land they once called home became the battleground of loyalty, vengeance, and a future rewritten in gunpowder and grit. That summer dust had barely settled when a whisper rode into town, the kind of whisper carried by desperate winds and rattling saloon doors. Word was, a notorious outlaw gang, led by a man known only as Black Crow, Malone, had set its sights on the McAllister ranch. They claimed it belonged to an old debt, a debt Jonas's father had refused to pay years ago, long before poverty became a constant companion. As Jonas sat by the fireplace that night, the embers cracked like secrets being torn open. Outside, hooves thundered. Black hooded riders emerged under a moonless sky, their eyes cold as iron and hands hungry for vengeance. Jonas stepped into the doorway, hand resting on the worn grip of his revolver. Behind him, the ranch's silent fields stretched under the stars, but tonight, those fields would witness blood and broken promises. The air tasted of dust and fear, and Jonas felt, for the first time, that survival might cost more than bullets, it might cost his soul. In the aftermath of that night, when the smoke cleared, and the bodies were counted, Jonas stood amid the ruin of what once was home. The ranch, burned half to ashes, barns collapsed, memories scattered like charred wood. But worse than the loss was betrayal. Someone had tipped off Malone's gang, a name whispered low: Dust Eyes, Harper. Jonas felt venom chill his blood as he confronted his once friend. Dust Eyes stood at the edge of the wreckage, eyes hollow, hands trembling. His gamble had cost everything, including trust. Jonas didn't speak. He didn't need to. In the silence, the creak of a rocking chair, the distant howl of a coyote, all said what words could not. That night, under the same cold stars that once watched over him as boy, Jonas made a vow: this land would either be his righteous grave, or the soil that carved a new legend. And vengeance, slow and unrelenting, would ride on him like a shadow as faithful as sunrise. Months passed, and Jonas wandered under endless skies, a lone rider on a dusty road, haunted by memories of fire and betrayal. Every town he passed whispered warnings and sideways looks. The dust carried rumors of a gunman with vengeance in his eyes. But Jonas had other plans. With every step of his horse, he carried the weight of promises broken and battles yet to be fought. He rode through canyons where vultures circled overhead, across creeks that reflected the moon like shattered glass, and over plains where the wind sang sorrowful songs of loss. Each night, beside a dying fire, Jonas looked at the stars and recalled the ranch, the barns, the laughter, all gone. But in that emptiness, a steel-cold resolve was born. He would track down every man who set foot in that homestead that night. And above all, he would confront Dust Eyes, Harper, not for justice but for closure. For sometimes, the past doesn't wait to be forgiven, it demands to be settled. On a bitter morning when the horizon was smeared with blood-red dawn, Jonas spotted his old friend, Harper, leaning against a saloon wall, shotgun resting heavy on his knee. The wind whispered dusty warnings as Jonas approached, his boots crunching on broken glass and dry gravel. Harper's eyes flickered, recognition, and regret, flashing in cold orbs. For a long, silent moment, no words passed, only the wind and the distant cry of a hawk. Then Jonas spoke, voice low and unyielding: "You gambled away more than land, Harper. You gambled away honor." Harper raised the shotgun, a shaky hand, trembling. But Jonas's revolver was steadier. In that final breath, before gunpowder and fate met, the world held its breath. A shot cracked through the dawn. Harper fell. The dust settled. In Harper's blood-stained eyes, Jonas saw not vengeance but freedom. He holstered his revolver, walked away from the saloon, and let the scorching sun rise on a man who had finished paying his debts, to land, to brotherhood, to himself. Jonas rode away that day, not as a boy bound by past debts, but as a legend carved from dust, fire, and blood. The prairie breeze carried his name, sometimes whispered in fear, sometimes in respect. Wherever injustice hid, the memory of Red Hand McAllister rode faster. And in the heart of the Wild West, some stories end with silence, while others become legends echoing across suns and storms.